to welcome you to tonight's planning board meeting, September 4th, 2019. My name is Pete Pecos, and to my left,
Larry Murphy.
Leslie Matthews.
George Morse.
Martha Taylor, town planner.
We have a pretty good agenda tonight. We're going to start off with our financial report, I believe. I will read that. Payroll and invoices signed, payroll warrants for town planner and planning administrator, PR 20-3 for payroll period ending 8/3/2019, 2004 ending 8/17/2019, and 2005 ending 8/31/2019. Planning board expenses for Verizon Wireless, monthly data charge from 8/5 to 8/20. So every meeting we have to read our financial report. That's why that is being done. All right, we don't have any minutes this evening, so we're going to move right into our appearances if we're ready to go that way. So our first appearance tonight will be Jennifer Ford for Seacoast K9 and Benjamin Tynan, Tynan LLC, status report on Seacoast K9 35 Downfall Road.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Ms. Ford is on her way up.
Great.
In fact, she's right here.
Excellent. So if you guys want to start with what you'd like to say to us?
Sure.
And we go from there.
I do have a couple of handouts. Martha Taylor had asked that you bring a copy of the employee or the code of conduct. So this is the one.
So I'm just going to introduce yourself.
Yes, certainly. From any particular.
Yeah, right there, it's good.
Benjamin Tynan for Jenny Ford and Seacoast K9. Ms. Ford and Dory Rosati, who has the title of office manager, is that? Or,
Sure.
both here as well. So that is the employee handbook / code of conduct. It's actually quite lengthy, but we've marked the page in it that speaks to Downfall Road traffic safety issues. I also wanted to hand out to the board an email exchange, series of email exchanges that I had with Sam Jocelyn back in the spring, which I'm not going to go into great detail. I'm just passing this down, thank you. On all of the bullet points, but I'll explain the relevance of that. So we really just wanted to have the opportunity to check in with the board prior to applying for the renewal of this one-year special permit for Seacoast K9, which is a daytime dog training facility, as those of you who were on the board last year would recall, which I believe is just the two members on the far left of the table at this point. And Jenny and Dory are here to answer any of the board's questions as well, but I wanted to go over a few main points. So first of all, we feel as if Jenny has done an excellent job of complying with the material conditions of the special permit. When we apply for renewal, one of the things we want to discuss with the board would be potential revision of some of those conditions to frankly make them a little bit more reasonable to comply with, because, as Jenny will point out, some of the conditions have to do with employees, arriving only between, I think it's 9 and 10 a.m. To drop dogs off, and there have been some occasions where, someone's running behind, they come at 10:15 or so on, and one of the things that we can provide to the board, I don't think we were able to bring it with us tonight, but we can provide it is that Jenny writes employees up when that happens, because she's being very diligent about complying with each of the conditions, but really in the scheme of things, it would be, I think, simpler to have broader windows for some of those things, because, excuse me, it doesn't seem think it really would have a heck of a lot of impact on the neighbors if someone is coming at 10:15 as opposed to 10. The reason I mention these kinds of things is because I think to put some of this in proper context for the board and for the neighborhood, there are a number of things that within this residential agricultural district, Jenny or any member of any resident of Downfall Road could do as of right that Jenny doesn't really have any plans to do, and other members of Downfall Road I don't think have plans to do, but that frankly would be more intense from a traffic point of view than what Jenny's actually doing. The 12 employee round trip standard that's in place is, in the scheme of things, again, a very low number of trips. We're not going to be asking to expand that at all, and Jenny's going to talk to you about actually plans that she has to be sending some of her dog training services off-site. So some of that may actually be subsiding in reality. But this is a relatively light intensity type of operation. And there are things like a farm stand, things like childcare, things like educational services under the Dover Amendment, which I know a lot about, that could be done, that are far more intense. So I think it's important that the neighbors take some of that into perspective, because this is not, you know, really a particularly intense type of use in our view. As to the car counting issue, this is going to come up, I think, in the context of Sam Jocelyn's memo, and the reason I passed out the email exchange with Mr. Jocelyn that I had in the spring was to show how conscientious Jenny has been and how diligent we've been in trying to work with the town and the neighbors on that issue. Because as you may recall, business operations trips were the things that were counted under the 12 total trips per day. And so the way we've tried to count that was through putting Seacoast Canine magnetized signs on the vehicles that belong to non-resident employees of the business. You know, we alerted Sam to the fact that Jenny purchased a bunch of these signs, which are pretty expensive. And she learned, because it's the first time she's had to do it, that a lot of them are flying off of cars in transit. So she lost a bunch of them, and when some of the cars were supposed to have one on each side, she lost some, and so for much of the year, some of the cars had just the one magnet on the back, which I would concede is in technical non-compliance with one of the conditions. I would say it's probably de minimis, and we alerted Sam to that in the spring, that we were dealing with that issue. That said, that is the way that the board and we have tried to deal with the issue of counting business operation trips, so that any neighbor or Sam could have a way of figuring out compliance with the number of trips. Now Jenny can explain her operations and why she feels very confident that, you know, has there been a week where they've gone over 60 trips? I certainly don't know. She doesn't think so, and if it's happened, it's been very minimal as far as business operation trips. She knows her business. She'll explain to you, for example, that the summertime is a slower period of time, and it's highly unlikely that that's occurred. Now, what Sam Jocelyn has talked about in his memo, and what has been discussed, was discussed in the spring email exchange that I had with him, speaks to overall trips, overall visitors to 35 Downfall Road at the end of Downfall Road. Now, Jenny has a big family. Jenny has friends that visit. Jenny's brother lives there. When you get a chance to read the email exchange, I sort of give Sam a flavor back in the spring of the kinds of activities that happen at her house. it's not Sam's fault, but it's a pretty intrusive kind of discussion that I don't think any other members of people, you know, on Downfall Road would care to be having to deal with in terms of who's coming and going, when, why, and so on. She's a resident of the town, people come to her house, and those are not countable trips, nor should they be the focus of regulation. So, if there's evidence of actual business operation trips as they're defined under the special permit that are beyond the 60 per week, then we'll address them. But I don't think that actual evidence is there. The neighbors, I think, are here. They may talk about that, but what I would ask the board to do, as I think you were able to do last year, is focus not on the quantity of complaints, because we know that there are a lot of complaints. We also know that many of the neighbors, frankly, have had it out for Jenny's business, and so don't focus on the number of complaints, because we know that that number is going to be high. Focus on the quality rather than the quantity of the complaints and the facts. We're happy to address those, and we're happy to work with the board, the town, neighbors, to make, you know, adjustments that may be necessary to the special permit. But, you know, Jenny plans to stay. She has every incentive to follow these rules. She wants to stay in business. She's working very, very hard to do this. And again, she has no incentive at all to deviate from these conditions. And she's doing a very good job doing that. So that's my presentation. Again, any questions that the board has for Jenny or Dory? And Jenny, I don't know if you want to give kind of a synopsis of your plans for the next year or so. Great.
Jenny Ford, 35 Downfall Road, corner of Seacoast Canaan. I think probably the most relevant thing that I would want to present to you tonight, prior to us coming to renew, is that I've increased, or I guess I've sped up my timeline. We've already found an off-site location. In the next few months, we'll be moving half, probably, of our operations there to be able to do the operations we're not allowed to do at the farm in terms of training with our clients. But at this time, you know, that's sort of something I'm doing at personal financial stakes, because we are a year out from the plan of doing that. But obviously the quantity of complaints that we've been receiving, or you've been receiving, that we recently found out about, made it clear that any dog operations in traffic is something that is not wanted in our neighborhood. It's always been the plan. I want my farm to be a farm. I don't really want it to be that care forever. So we are increasing that timeline. We have the new location. We have to negotiate flooring and some of, you know, town permitting there. But by the end of this year, we'll be operational there as well. So although we are not at capacity in terms of dogs or employees or traffic, especially in the summer, we're fairly quiet compared to the rest of the year. We are doing more farm things, and the summer has been much more of a focus on the farm itself. So we will obviously be generating traffic for residential reasons, for agricultural reasons, and some of those little things that we want to do apart from the dog business. But rather than continuing to be a point of contention, I thought the sooner we can simplify things would be better. So we do have that sort of in the works, and thought that would be important for you to know. But any questions you guys have, obviously I'm happy to clarify.
Well, first, thank you for your presentation. It's warranted and noted. And glad that there's a desire to try to address concerns that have been raised. And when we started this, I guess it was last November. It was a negotiating process, and we tried to make sure that everybody was comfortable with the situation. And sometimes things don't work out as we hope, but we're hopeful that we can get back to a situation where everyone is comfortable and satisfied. With that said, I just want to ask you a couple questions.
Sure.
Is your site in Newbury, in Amesbury still a site that you use?
We rent, it's a small space, we
Okay.
do our training classes
So there'd be a
there.
different space you'd be going to?
Yeah, a larger space where we can do the dog play
Okay.
that we do at the farm
Okay.
right now.
And from what I remember and what we had for guidelines, we weren't gonna have more than 40 dogs
Right.
at any time. So do I interpret if you say that you're gonna be moving 50% of your operation offsite, does that mean that your volume of dogs will go down to about 20?
I think it will, so our average is 30, currently.
Okay,
40 is our cap.
okay.
And so, yeah, we don't average that much at this time, which is why ideally I wanted to wait another year, but, I think primarily we'll use the other space because it's mostly indoors, which is easier in a lot of ways for us. We have some clients who prefer the farm, and some dogs that we think need outdoor space. So our reasonable goal is to split 50-50. Our kennel license there will be 50 dogs, so it's a much larger space, but, ideally, I wanna maintain 40 as our cap at the farm, more as a fallback if like we had a leak or something and needed dogs to be all in one location for certain times. But I think that's something we can negotiate with a special permit, if that's like a, if we give you notice. But yeah, I wouldn't want more than 20 dogs there.
Okay, so the contingency is that you fall back to 40, but your goal is to have 20 dogs.
Right, cause the space to grow will be in the new location.
With that said, would that mean that our trip count will be going down, or would our trip count be about the same?
That's something we still have to work out as a team. Mostly where the ideal location would be to train new employees, who ultimately will work at the second location. But since I will be at the farm, typically I train new employees, so I think we probably need 3, for daily operations. We might need a 4th if someone's in training, basically.
So I guess what I'm trying to get back down is to trip counts on the road, as far as,
We have
would you see that, I think we talked about was 60 trip counts a day, would that number be?
a week,
A week,
No,
I'm sorry, yes.
that was one way. So it's-
12 one way each day.
So are we gonna be adhering to?
No. 6 one way each day.
No, 6 round trips.
6 round
So
trip.
what we're gonna do, folks, is we're gonna have our discussion, and then we're gonna open it up for questions and comments. So let the board kind of gather information from this presentation, I think that's the best way to go.
Right, so non-resident employees, we would have 3. So 3 round trips. And that's the same, if for some reason we needed all dogs at the farm, we would need all employees, obviously, to maintain our ratio that we keep between dogs and people. But I think that would only be if we had some worst case scenario thing happening.
Okay, so I'm just gonna
Hopefully.
read condition 5, so I understand it correctly.
Yeah.
There will be no more than 60 one-way vehicle trips, 30 round trips per week total, and no more than 12 one-way trips, 6 round trips per day total by non-resident and or resident employees to and from the property while conducting from 9 to 3 p.m.
Yep.
So what we're saying is there won't be now more than 3.
So I would say we would have.
Well, that's your target.
Right, so we would have 3 non-resident employees at the farm to run daily operations. I come and go. And my brother who lives there is our backup driver, so I'd say 4
So I'm
round trips a day.
just gonna read the last part of that. It says, 6 round trips per day by non-resident and or resident employees to and from the property.
Right,
So that's anybody doing business,
that's anyone transporting dogs to the daycare, yeah. Yeah,
resident or non-resident.
yeah.
So the goal is to decrease that by 50%, which would be 3 round trips per day.
So I'd say 4.
4.
back. But, yeah, so there are some things this summer, you know, we've been clearing, like, there's some trails in the woods, some gardens, nothing, you know, at this point, obviously the dog business, especially being in 2 locations, takes up my entire life, so, so assuming that that is how it's continuing, it wouldn't be anything more than hobby level.
And just so it's clear, so everyone in the audience and everyone on the board understands, what will happen is there'll be a request to continue renew the permit in November. So that's why we're kind of getting this discussion going now.
It's just an informal discussion. And that would be the subject of public hearing, I assume.
Yes. Does anybody have any questions from the board?
I just wanted to, I am new to the board since this special permit was granted last November, and I just want to make sure I understand the activity that's going on there.
Sure.
So basically, what you have is doggy daycare, and you do training as well.
Yes.
You're not boarding dogs overnight or anything like that?
No, so we do pet sitting, our employees pet sit, I have
Off
dogs
location
sitting-
or on location?
Yeah, off location.
Okay.
The only time dogs stay with me is if they're in training, like boot camps.
Okay, and it's your employees who transport the dogs to and from your location, not the dog's owners?
Correct, our clients are not allowed to come to the farm.
Okay, and what sort of vehicles do your employees use? Like vans or?
We have a Suburban, and SUVs, pretty much all SUVs.
And how many employees do you have total?
Total I have 15, but we do dog walking in Newburyport.
So
They
they're
are.
not, on a daily basis, they're not coming to your
No.
location?
They have everything they need.
And are these full-time?
Self-sufficient.
Full-time or part-time employees?
Part-time primarily. We have 2 managers, so they're full-time.
Okay, and currently you have about 30 dogs that you're,
Yeah, we average 30 a day.
okay. And once you establish the off-site location, you're not intending to abandon this use of Downfall Road, are you? You just reduce it and
Yeah, something that is easier for me to live with.
Okay.
But we have some longtime clients who feel very invested about their dogs playing on a farm, so, so they're sort of our exclusive group, and actually, we won't be adding new dogs to it, it'll be a fairly closed group once they split, so new dogs will go to the new location.
And I assume you must have a kennel license in Newbury?
Yeah.
And you anticipate getting a kennel license for the location in Amesbury as well?
Yeah, it was actually an existing dog business, and so there is a kennel license for the space for 50 dogs, and so we are just transferring ownership to us.
And when you come before the board in November, given your future plans, is it your intention to ask us to reduce, say, the number of daily trips, or you're gonna wanna keep those in place?
No, I mean, I think that's a question I have for the board, what would be the easiest? I would like the contingency if necessary, you know, if we needed to move dogs for some reason from the second location. But, like, barring any unforeseen circumstances, they would essentially just be split permanently, so. And if, you know, a few years down the line, we increase into a different space, we'll probably end up moving all the dogs off because we'll have enough space for multiple groups of dogs.
Hey Jenny, did you say that you use 2 vehicles primarily? A Suburban and a van?
No, so we have a Suburban, I own a Suburban, an SUV and a car, or hatchback. And then we have the primary drivers also have SUVs.
Okay, so the primary driver uses their own vehicle?
Yeah.
They're using their own vehicles, that's what I remember from our previous
Yes,
discussion.
yeah.
And I'm sorry, in the 30, I think you mentioned currently you have, I don't know what the right term is, 30 canine clients?
Yeah.
Approximately?
Yes.
Okay, and are all
Cat
those, and some of them, I think you mentioned some of them are cared for off-site. So on any, today, how many dogs did you have there today?
I'm gonna check, but probably between 30 and 35.
Okay, I just.
We're getting our back-to-school dogs back from the summer, so
Okay.
we're closer to 35 during school year.
I'm all set.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And now I think I'd like to see if there are any questions for this informal discussion from the audience or folks on Don Full Road? Come on up,
Nope,
identify yourself.
she's going first, never mind. Sorry.
I'd like to bring, my name's Joanne Hogan. I live on Downfall. I live on the first house on the left after the runway. It's green. Just to bring the new members up to speed, I feel that the decisions were made in favor of this business without consideration to the neighbors. This is a residential street. It's a dead-end street. And so what goes down has to come down. I'd also like to mention that when this all started, I sent an email to Martha. Without my knowledge, she forwarded it to Jim. That was unfortunate because it was a breach of confidence. So if I have little confidence in the board, it goes with that history.
Well, can I interrupt you 1 second? Anything that she sent to Martha is a public record. Okay, it can't be held in confidence.
She should have let me know at least that she was sending it to Jen. Because Jen then responded to me, and I didn't even know who she was. It would have been polite, at the very least, to let me know you were sending it to somebody else. To my knowledge, all of the guidelines are not followed. If these signs whip off the car in the wind, it's incumbent upon the owner to replace them as soon as possible. I have seen very few signs on the cars. Maybe, I'm not even gonna mention numbers, but I've seen very few on the cars. The road is posted 20 miles an hour. 2 weeks ago, I was in my yard. My house sits quite close to the road. I was in my yard and came out and was going out to the road. I was gardening. And a car came flying down the street. And it was one of the cars from the doggy daycare.
Did it have the sign on it?
It did not.
Okay.
And then another car came right after it. I then went out in the street so they could see me in the rearview mirror and said, "Slow down." Then 2 more cars came, and the same situation. Now, because I'm aware, I mean, I didn't go out into the street, but if I had gone out into the street, I would have been hit. There are children in the neighborhood that need to be protected. And if these people are driving willy-nilly at high speeds down the street, I will say that since then, with my waving them to slow down, there has been a slower pace. Now, my biggest concern is for the future, because I don't feel that the guidelines have been adhered to. The numbers of people going down the street, the speed at which they go, I don't go down there and count dogs, so I don't know that. But my concern is the future. This is a residential, narrow road. And it has a bump down towards the end, further down from me. And you can't see over that bump. If I walk in the neighborhood, I have to make sure that I look to see if anybody's coming. And these cars are going fairly fast. There should be a sign on the other end of the road, by the way. My concern is that what's going to happen with this business in the future? I envision this being expanded because I don't have any trust. And so I would just like the board to consider the neighborhood as well as this new person who's moved into the neighborhood with a business. Because it really is a residential dead-end road. Thank you.
Okay, may I, Ms. Hogan? If you don't mind, I certainly appreciate your concern about the speed. Do you have any sense of the number of vehicle trips per day that you can attribute to the business?
I can't honestly say that I do because I'm usually at the back of the house. I really see them when I'm out there gardening. But I've been in that house for 55 years. Believe me, the traffic has picked up quite a bit from that then. And there's only been 1 or 2 houses built on the street since I moved there. So, you know, given that most families have 2 cars now, where back then they probably had 1, there's certainly that to be considered. But there is a lot of traffic on that street.
Do I have to go up there? Awesome. I love it. Love it.
Would you just identify yourself, please?
I'm Amanda Cannon. I live at 32 Downfall Road. I'm pretty much kitty corner from where the doggy daycare is. I'm the house right over that hump, so where you can't see. I have 3 children, 10-year-old, an autistic 8-year-old, and a 5-year-old. So we've had a couple incidences. The school has been in session for 2 days now. Walking to the school first day, Tuesday, we get to the end of the street, and Jenny in her personal car, 745, is driving out. So under my knowledge, it's between 8 and 3. So that's, my kids are little walking to the bus stop, and that's outside of the time frame. Whether it's a personal trip, I have no idea. I'm not gonna stop her and say, hey, where are you going? Leaving the bus stop yesterday, I had to pick up my kids in my car to drive down the street, and a big SUV with the doggy daycare sign was pulled in right behind me. So they're returning from their trip. This is at 3:20. This is when my 3 small children and another child, we have what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 kids at the bus stop, all in elementary school, walking home. So this is what we were really trying to avoid, trips between 8 a.m. and 3. The bus picks up at 7:50, the bus drops off at 3:20. We should have no issues that way. Today, I was walking to the bus stop at 3:12. The big SUV again, big black Suburban, or I don't even know what it is, big black SUV, was driving towards me. Then the same driver turned around before I even hit the end of the street, is now driving out in a black truck. So they have employees that drive in on their personal vehicle, grab a company vehicle, drive out, pick up the dogs, drive back in. They do their doggy daycare, they take the company vehicle, drive out, drive back in with the company vehicle, turn around on their own personal car, and drive out. Right there's 6 trips for 1 employee. That's not including the trips that Jenny makes to pick up dogs, or Dory makes to pick up dogs. I'm not sure if you even live there still.
I do, but I
So-
come visit because she's my best friend.
But you're still an employee that comes with dogs or works,
No,
you don't work at that location at all?
no, I'm working off site.
Oh, okay, that's awesome. So, so how many employees do you have coming in? Just you, just
4 or
2?
5.
So if I have 1 person making 6 trips alone, then that's not being adhered to. Like they're only allowed 12 trips a day. And it's not being adhered to within the time frame, because the past 2 days that my children are walking on the street, we have cars that are driving with Seacoast stickers. One of them has a placard on it, so I can't even say, oh, well, maybe it's not their truck. It is, it has a sign. So it's like, that's something so simple that it's the first 2 days of school where my children are walking on the street, to they're afraid to walk to the bus stop. I'm afraid to have them walk to the bus stop and back. I live on a dead-end street in Byfield. Why can my children not walk to the bus stop? It's because cars are driving. The first day of spring last year, I had an incident with one of your employees. There were still snowbanks. My 5-year-old, my 2 older kids walked home from the bus. I drove past them. I parked in the driveway. My 5-year-old, I was at the end of my van. My 5-year-old ran to the end of the street to see where her siblings were. A car flew by with one of her placards on the side. My daughter then screamed and jumped back into the driveway. She's 5 years old at this point in time. I call her directly. I call the phone number that I had online, because in the paper, it says if you have an issue, she wants to handle it. So I'm giving her the benefit of the doubt. Hey, listen, you said that you will handle this, let me get in touch with you. I left her a voicemail. At this point, her car, again, the employee came back in his personal car, because he does 6 trips alone. And he said, point blank to me, that he didn't even see my daughter. He looks at the road when he drives and doesn't look at driveways. I am the only driveway past that hill that has kids. Why are you not looking in my driveway? Then he then told me to, again, I have the video, I screamed, I freaked out. I'm a mother of children that almost got hit by a car. Well aware that I freaked out, I'm okay with that. He then looked at me square in the face and said, well, maybe you should watch your children. I did. That's how I saw you almost hit my child. I then called Jenny again, left a voicemail saying where I lived, what my telephone number is. I have an issue, please contact me. She never did. 2 days later, I contacted Sam because I'm trying to give her the benefit of the doubt to deal with these issues. First of all, it's 3:30. Your employee should not be driving on the road. He told me it's a public road, he can drive where he wants. Well, not when you're working with a company that has a special permit. That's an issue. It's 3:30, you're driving down the road, speeding, admit that you don't see my 5-year-old in my driveway, and then continue to tell me that I should have watched my children. If he looked at me and said, you know what, ma'am, I'm so sorry, I was running late, I was definitely in a hurry, I apologize, I didn't see it. What could I couldn't have freaked out. I could have been like, all right, can you watch next time? Nope, he sat there arguing with me saying that I should watch my children. It's not acceptable. I have no proof on how many cars they drive. I see it, but I don't personally have proof. But the timing, I do. It's literally after 3 p.m. and before 8 a.m. And that is blatant disregard to what you guys set for them to be able to have this special permit. Blatant disregard to your guys' authority. And I'm the one that has to scream at them. And my kids are genuinely afraid to play on the street. They can't ride their bikes. They can't go to their friend's house without me literally watching the road. She's 10 years old. She should be able to ride to the next street. So that's my main concern for my kids.
Anyone else like to make any comments?
Oh, yeah.
I'm Avery Woodworth, 19 Downfall Road. I don't know really where to start because there's so much. Obviously, you've heard a couple of concerns. I'm going to go right to the traffic count. We have a camera. I'm going to throw it right out there. We document every trip, every day since November. It's all in a logbook. She runs anywhere from between slow day, her normal 15 or 20, up to over 50 a day. Going fast, all documented, literally 2 to 3 minutes apart. They go down there, they're down there for 2 or 3 minutes, they come back out. They change vehicles, they drive their own vehicles, there are out-of-state vehicles. Some of them are really respectful, I'll give you that. Some of them are blatantly disrespectful. The times go from 7:30 in the morning to 7:30 at night. They run every weekend. They ran over the holiday weekends. They had an open house when they were not supposed to have an open house because it was never announced to the neighbors, and we were all supposed to be included in that. It ran from, I believe, 7:30 till 5 at night. It was only supposed to be from 9 to 11 per your orders. Okay? We've made multiple calls to you, to Sam. I'd like to know how many dogs are really down there. Has a dog officer been down there? No. Has a policeman been down there to clock somebody speeding? No. We are getting zero support from you guys and the town. I figured, I know Sam wrote you a letter, Martha. How are you gonna explain that letter if Sam is not here? Wouldn't it be a good idea for him to be here? And I would have appreciated a call back, thank you. It's way out of control. And you can't give me, she can't give me a story about, oh, I have friends coming down. Friends don't go to a house 4 or 5 times a day and stay for 2 minutes. Doesn't happen, unless you're really strange friends. And we have also documented there's a lot of late evening traffic. I can't attribute it to her necessarily, but we never had that before. And I'm talking 11:30 at night, 11:40 at night, same thing. 1 or 2 cars come in, one behind the other, go down, come back 2 or 3 minutes later, come back in a half hour later, leave 2 or 3 minutes later. We know all the neighbors' cars. We've been there for 25 years. I'd have to correct Joanne, there are actually, I believe, 4 new houses on the street. So you guys can do the math of what an average house adds to traffic, but it's been like that. The newest house built down there is 20 years old. So when we moved here, there was 0 traffic. You didn't have to look when you went out here. Didn't matter. You could walk anytime you wanted. Kids could ride their bikes anytime you wanted. It is a highway, and it is statistically very significant, the number of traffic loads that are going down that street right now. So I'd like to know how we're gonna rectify this situation, because it's way over the top, and we're getting no support, and you're making us into the bad guys and into the police. It's not my job. You guys said it was enforceable. I don't think it is. Sam doesn't have the time. Sam's not getting paid to do it after hours. He has 2 towns he takes care of as an inspectional services person. What are we gonna do? And I would like some answers tonight, because we've been getting the brush off for months.
Well, I can start by saying first, this is an informal discussion. So what we're trying to do is try to collect information. That's what tonight is about, is to collect information. We can't act on information tonight, that's not our job. Our job will be to look at a permit in November to see if the concerns.
November, we have to move fast out of November to look at it at least and come up with some kind of resolution, because they're not abiding by it. They say they are, but they're not. Dory says she's a friend. Her car goes up and down the street 10 times a day, 3 minutes apart, 4 minutes apart. Then she'll stay for half an hour, come back out. There are at least, I don't know, 6 or 7 employees that are going up and down the street regularly in their own cars. I mean, now she claims her brother's living there. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't, I don't know. But there's way more than 4 employees going up and down the street. Way more. It's scary. And it's not a small home-based business. It's a hundreds of thousands of dollars big business. Good for her. She's doing a great job. It's big money. And I see people all over the place that she's picking up, and not many of them are in Byfield. So those are my concerns, and that's just some of them. I'll let anybody else speak. Would anyone else like to?
Yes.
Get up
Come on up,
first?
sir.
How you doing? My name is Gary Scobert. I live at 4 Johnson Lane. And I just want to relate something about the speeding and the traffic and safety. I was got hit 3 weeks ago. I live on Johnson Lane, and I usually walk down to the post office. And I'm walking about 3 weeks ago and going up Downfall towards the post office. And this black SUV, dark truck, I don't know if that has a sign on it or not, is coming at me. And at the same time, there's another vehicle going the other way. So I had to literally jump out of the way or would have been hit by the vehicle. And it was going a lot more than 20 miles an hour. And unfortunately, even at my age, I'm pretty light on my feet, but it was a child that, a child could have been killed because both vehicles were passing each other. And it's so narrow there, I had to jump way off to the side of the road that was no way being hit. So I just think there's a real issue with the speed. And I can't comment on that. I think Avery's commented very well, but I'm not, I can't comment on that, but I know people are running way too fast. It's a very dangerous situation, and I think it's been brought to the boards, and to me, as a taxpayer, I'm concerned, because I think the town should be liable. I don't want to see a child get hit, but if a child gets hit, I think this town is liable for not protecting us. Thank you.
So Gary, can I just ask you a question? too?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. I'm very sorry that that happened.
Yeah.
And I'm very sorry that you felt as though your life was in danger.
Well, I got out of the way quickly.
It's a concern. I'm just gonna ask, did you by chance contact the Newbury Police to let them know of your concern?
No.
Okay.
No.
Um,
I wrote a letter to Martha,
Okay.
so I documented it.
Okay. So I think when there's a public safety concern and it's real and it's immediate, the remediation for a situation like that is to call the authorities that handle that sort of stuff.
Okay.
And to say, hey, look, this happened on this date, and I'm very concerned about it. And if the officers feel it's appropriate to have an investigation, they'll activate an investigation. And they're actually the authority to do that stuff like that. we're here to try to develop guidelines, to help facilitate the process of, business trying to exist in the community and having those two components.
Okay, but I feel for the safety, especially this woman with her children.
And as do we,
Okay. Okay.
But I think what I'm trying to say is if there's an immediate situation, and I would say that to anyone, if there's an immediate situation, please do not hesitate to contact the authorities that need to be contacted so that they can say, hey, this is a
Okay.
concern, and if there is something which needs to be identified and dealt with in a very timely manner, that's the way to do it. Our job is a little bit different here. And, what we'll be doing is we'll be looking at this and, listening to comments, listening to folks' concerns, and then trying to make an appropriate informed decision.
Okay.
Honest, but, I'm sorry, and, get the situation.
Okay, the comments are well taken. Thank you very much for listening to me.
I'm just gonna ask the person who hasn't spoken yet to.
You get to go, Elizabeth.
Oh.
The person who hasn't spoken yet.
Would be you, Elizabeth. Okay, Elizabeth Woodworth, 1910 Fall. I'm gonna preface this by saying I immediately went to Martha Taylor, after the special permit was issued in November, and I said, there's a big problem here. I said, they've been doing multiple trips as soon as she moved in, before she even got a special permit. And I said, so the way you guys have written it up, there's no enforcement. Who's gonna enforce the number of trips? It's all contingent on what she says, right? Who knows? And there was all this talk like, oh, like we could have speed bumps, we could have traffic counting, all that BS, that really, everybody laughed, it's a joke, it's not gonna happen. And I told Martha, I said, look, this is bad because all this enforcement is gonna come down to us as neighbors. This is a residential street. She got a special permit to open a commercial business on a residential, narrow, dead-end street that everybody drives down and turns around and comes back. There's only one way in, there's only one way out. And I said, it's not fair. Do you remember that, Martha? I said, it's not fair that we're gonna be the bad guys. Cause now I love animals. I'd probably be your friend if I didn't have a problem with your business being so busy. But I mean, I'm not gonna sit back and let her change my quality of life on a residential street when she gets a special permit that was issued by people who don't live on the street. And it doesn't matter to you guys what what the traffic situation's like. So, reluctantly, I have to keep track of the cars that go down because it bothers me that there are people, a lot of animals, there's a blind person who lives in our neighborhood. I just saw him out there today.
Yeah.
I mean, I just feel like it's a residential street. It should be, I don't mind if you had maybe a couple trips, but it's not a couple of trips. So I'm gonna ask you because I know they're your cars, but I'm gonna ask you anyway. So there's 3 cars that are from New Hampshire. I know they don't live there. They're from New Hampshire, right?
Yeah, my brother lives there.
He lives in New Hampshire. I thought he lived at your house.
He just moved from my house.
Well, anyway, he's got a
She's
New
also
Hampshire
from New Hampshire.
thing.
And I'm from New
And
Hampshire.
I don't
3 of
think,
my cousins are
And I
from New
visit.
Hampshire, and they've been helping me raise goats this summer.
okay, so at 8:30,
He
he came
drives
in
cars.
today
He
in
drives
the black
dogs.
Yaris. And I could list all these things, there's a black Suburban, there's a royal blue Ford Escape, that's New Hampshire plates, there's a white, and these are like 8:30, 8:37, 8:48, 8:55, 8:55, 9 o'clock. So anyway, there were 34 trips today. She's only allowed to have 12. There were 34 trips today, and not counting Jen Ford's trips, of which I think she has 8. She has 3 signs total for all those cars, so there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, there were 14 cars that don't live on our street that I see going into the driveway, that, I don't know, I mean, if she's not running doggy daycare, what's she doing?
Mr.
I mean,
Chairman,
I just feel like it's not,
I mean,
can I
it's.
ask a question?
No, hold on.
No, they're finished. Let her finish.
What's taking place right now is we're receiving information. This is not gonna be a debate. I don't wanna have a debate. I just wanna collect information. And this is an informal discussion. This is not a public hearing. This is an informal discussion. Please.
Yeah, so, I mean, I try to be very careful, because I'm not the type of person to make accusations lightly. But I do find it's offensive when, on a holiday weekend, I see people that don't live on our street that also come during the week as daycare people.
That was me. I came
Yeah,
to
it's
hang out with
You
them.
and many others.
Okay,
It's not a
so,
discussion.
I mean, I don't wanna get into this, but I mean, you come 10 times a day just to be our friend?
I do, I come and walk the dogs, my son likes to play with the So goats. that's working for your work.
Well,
I walk my personal dogs on Jenny's
Okay.
18-acre farm
So, again.
with them.
Okay, so my problem is, when I have months of 35, 45, 50 trips a day of people who do not live on our street, who come down the exact time, and Avery got it wrong, they don't just come for 5 minutes, they stay. A lot of them, even today, starting at 2 o'clock, and the guy in the black Ford Escape, you're gonna have to talk to him.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Black
Oh, yes.
Suburban.
No.
He's got a black Ford SUV that's got Escape on the back of it. It's a Ford Escape. Okay, so he comes in, I can tell you when he came in today. Let's see, that's Tuesday, sorry. Let's see, Wednesday.
Oh, God, yeah. You should see
Hold
this.
on. It was 10 o'clock maybe? 9:52, black Ford Escape. He left today at 2:09. And I watched him go into the driveway because I was just like, okay, I don't wanna make accusations that aren't true. I know you don't know me, and it's too bad, cause most of the time I'm a nice person. But anyway, I don't know, so now, like, I'm the bad guy, right? Like, where's the traffic counting? I know, Sam gave you guys a letter, I think it was March 12th, saying that she was not in compliance of the number of trips and signage. What happened with that? Nothing. That was March. He's just gave you guys a letter yesterday saying the same thing, and nothing's changed. So I don't really know what to say. Like, why would you give a rule that you can't enforce? How can you enforce? Now you're gonna say like, oh, she's just like causing trouble for her. I'm not causing trouble. I'm just trying to protect my animals and trying to protect my neighborhood. I mean, what if I wanna start like a big business? You'd have to give it to me because she already has one, so why could you start, what if everybody started to have businesses? You have to be careful about how you gonna enforce. You made the rules, now you guys need to enforce them. It shouldn't be the neighborhood to enforce them or to keep track of them. I don't think. Anyway,
Thank you.
thanks.
Appreciate it. Is there anyone else who would like to speak that hasn't addressed the board yet?
Evelyn Noyes, 5 Downfall Road, and I think what I'm objecting to is the insinuations. I've known the Timon family, the Ford family for, seems like 100 years, and they're the most conscientious, trustworthy family that I've ever met. And I just think that a young person starting out in a business needs to be encouraged. We have so many young people that just leave the town, they don't even stay because they can't work here. And when we have someone that can, I think we ought to help them. And I know Jenny is the type of person that will do whatever she can to remedy whatever the problems are.
Thank you. Is there anyone else
Just
who would
one
like
quick
to
thing.
speak that hasn't spoken? Come on up.
Are you going?
Hey, Erica O'Neill, Fort Lenway. I just moved in, I think it's been 2.5 years. We moved from Lynn, Massachusetts, looking for a better place to raise my daughter. And we chose Blackville. We chose that neighborhood. We looked for over 1.5 years to find a place, and that was the perfect neighborhood. And I mean, it was Evelyn yourself that sold us the house and told us how quiet of a neighborhood it was, and it was when we first moved in. Now I don't even trust my daughter riding her bicycle down to her friend's house down at the end of Downfall. I don't trust it. We have a neighbor that lets them kindly cut through their yard because it's not safe. Had I known that before I bought the house, I would have kept looking. It's crazy. That's all I just wanted to throw in.
Is there anyone else that would like to address this board? Would you like to come back up and say something?
Just real quick.
We're trying to get any back
Nope.
and forth stuff. Thanks.
Nope, I'm just gonna comment on what you said about, the police. Last spring, sitting at the bus stop, I did contact the police twice on 2 different, times because of the speed that cars were coming up to the stop sign and not stopping. And then again, we have a blind boy that walks, James, from Lenway. He walks on Downfall with a stick by himself. He's very independent. He's able to walk to where he can't see a car, unfortunately, coming on such a skinny road. So that's my concern also, to where the man had to jump out of the way, so this boy wouldn't be able to, unfortunately, defend himself, but still feels like this is a safe neighborhood to live in because of what we were able to do beforehand.
And so Amanda, when you contacted the police, what was the outcome of that?
They said they would patrol it more often.
And did you-
Twice.
And did you notice that?
I've seen 1 police officer there since. And that was probably a month after I contacted them. And this was after also my daughter almost getting hit. I contacted them 2 days later because I'm like, all right, well, I can't get a hold of her. I can't get a hold of Sam. I've got to get a hold of somebody. Like, my children are not safe on their road. So I contacted the police. They said that they would monitor it more. Then probably 2 weeks later, I noticed at the stop sign, people are coming, barely stopping and going through, or coming down in between the church. What is that? Church Street, I'm guessing. That's a good guess. And they would just take the corner. And I'm sitting at the bus stop waiting for my children to get off, so the bus is coming at any moment, and these people aren't stopping and just turning. So, and unfortunately, I do know that it was the same cars that I see going to the driveway from my driveway. So I know that it's vehicles from hers. And I haven't seen a police officer there since.
I know we live in Massachusetts, but despite the fact that we live in Massachusetts, we have California stops.
We are horrible at stopping, but unfortunately, when there's 7 kids, 6 kids at a bus stop, and 3 of them are mine, I think we got a good majority of the kids.
It's prevalent throughout.
So it's, and we have kids that walk by themselves.
And folks don't always observe speed limits.
Nope.
And I think everyone in the room can appreciate that individually. It's, you know, some things that we have to probably look at.
It is, cause again, I've had tips, one of my neighbors has gone down a little bit fast while I'm having a huge cookout. And I've said, hey guys, like we're having, and they're like, oh, sorry, but I'm able to contact them. Like, that's the type of thing that I'm able to do, and unfortunately, that's not able to be done with the company that was said that I could contact her directly. I've tried twice, so.
I have a question, if I may, and I'll direct it to you, but I'll
Okay.
invite anyone else to answer.
Okay.
Have you observed any peak hours of traffic that you associate with the doggy daycare business?
So I bring my kids to school, and then it's a big flood right after I, either during while they're at the bus stop or right after.
And what time do the kids go to the bus stop?
7:53 the bus picks up.
So 8 o'clock-ish?
Right before 8, and then there's a big flood right after, and then
Yeah, I'm sorry, after what?
after 8. So
Coming and going, you mean?
correct.
Okay.
And they come, they go, again, I know like the person that I literally spoke to when I had the incident with my daughter, he literally on video said that he makes personally 6 trips a day to the daycare. And she says that she has 4 employees plus herself, or 4 including herself, if that person's making 6, and I know I've seen her brother, I believe it is, right?
Christian.
Yep, Christian, just today, he's pulling down the road with a sign on the side of the truck past 3 p.m. So it's a big flood right before, but he lives with you.
Okay, so,
No, he's leaving.
Amanda, I just wanna understand something you just said.
Right.
Amanda, you said that you had someone on video who worked for this group that says that they make more than 6 trips a day?
They make 6 trips personally a day, because he drives in on his personal car, then he leaves in a company car to go pick up dogs, comes back with dogs. Then he leaves in a company car with dogs to drop them off, comes back, picks up his personal car and leaves.
And you have that on a recording?
I do. I was definitely frantic during the video, I'm not going to lie. There was,
I understand.
but yes, on video, and that's when he told me
Is your question?
on video.
Was that answered?
Yes. Well,
And it
what-
was,
what
the
about-
afternoon is, again, unfortunately, there seems to be an influx right around noon time as well. Not too sure if they're, some are leaving for lunch, I don't know what they do, but there's an influx right around there because I leave, last year I was leaving to drop my daughter off at preschool. So I'd have to leave, she got dropped off at 12, so I'd leave my house around 11:40. There were always cars driving back and forth right around that time until I got back to the house around 12:30. And then again, when I go to pick up my kids at the bus stop, there's cars going up and down that entire time as well. And I would be sitting at the bus stop at 3:10. After I picked up my daughter at preschool, I'd go and sit at the bus stop, which is at the end of the road, and there were multiple trips being made after 3 p.m. Again, just today I have the big SUV coming in at 3:15 as I was walking to the bus stop to pick up my kids. So yeah, that's definitely when the big influx, and I did contact the police, unfortunately. So.
Robin Lawson, 9 Lenway Road. With all due respect, please, your comment about this being Massachusetts and California stops and speeding, we're talking about a special permit.
Anyone else that hasn't spoken yet would like to speak? And I apologize if my comment about California stop was misinterpreted or, I'm sorry for that. Does anyone want to add anything new? I don't want to hear rebuttals, anything new to the discussion. Okay, Ben, do you want to come up?
Yes, I think it's just really a point of clarification because I've heard a lot of the neighbors talk about Jenny pulling out of the driveway at 7:45 and 54 trips reported and so on. I just think it's important to reemphasize that the special permit is all about business operation trips, which is defined in the special permit as uses and activities regulated by this decision. So that's doggy daycare trips. So when Mrs. Woodworth had her log, the question I wanted to ask you was how many of those cars did you observe that had dogs in them? Because those would be the trips that are regulated. Jenny's trips are not regulated. Family members' trips are not regulated. Yes.
Again, I don't want to get into I appreciate the.
I think the board I recognize the board understands that. I don't know that the neighbors do, so I wanted to make that comment.
Thank you.
We're the villains. We're the villains.
Larry?
Mr. Timon?
Yes,
Excuse me,
I'm sorry.
Just to follow up, I wanted to clarify something. There's been a lot of talk about company vehicles. How many
Right.
company vehicles are there?
Jenny, why don't you?
So do your employees come and leave their vehicles there and then use your vehicles?
So we have, the Suburban, which stays at the farm because Chris drives it and he lives there, so that's where he comes and goes from. But once he's done driving dogs for the day, he takes his personal vehicle, obviously, to do whatever. The other employees have SUVs already, so they use them out.
Do they?
And the other company vehicle is,
Black hatchback?
okay, and do these have
Hyundai?
commercial plates on them?
No, that one's still a mixed use vehicle.
So they're not company vehicles?
Right.
And then how
The
many?
Suburban is because we only use it for the business.
Okay, so that has commercial plates?
Yes.
So you don't have people coming, leaving their personal vehicles and then taking one of your vehicles?
No, so that was one of the initial problems that we needed to figure out with Sam. And so I essentially, it belongs to that employee and it stays at their house.
But it seems that, I mean, we're hearing a lot about it, but it appears to be an awful lot of traffic, probably, you know, just trying to get a handle on, you know.
Yeah,
And
none,
how
the
many-
employees who come to the farm stay for the day. They're not allowed to leave for lunch if they wanted to get food, but we only do 10-minute breaks, so there's not a lot of time for that, so.
The employees tend to be younger people, older people.
We have a pretty good range, actually. So, the younger ones usually are training under older ones. And I think, if it helps that we do write up employees for any breaches in their code of conduct that we hear about.
What do you do with that?
Right, because I did see the disciplinary protocols in there.
It is, so our HR, we had a strict, like, 1 strike, 2 strike, like, policy. She had us amend it to be a little bit more open, to kind of, we can discipline as needed, so that we don't need to go to 2 strike policy if there was a blatant, breach of that.
I mean, have you fired anybody?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, to be candid with you, to give you my impression, getting the handle on what's a business trip down, you know, downfall, what isn't, is very difficult. There's a lot of compelling testimony here about excessive speed, and I think that's something you're gonna have to get a handle on. I'm just speaking for myself, no one else up here.
And I think to the extent that when we do reapply, if to the extent that the board members have particular things that you'd like to see, like, for example, an example of a written write-up or something like that.
That has been done.
Yes, yes.
So there's a log of speeding violations.
I don't know if it's a log or if it's just a particular, you mentioned that you've written
Yeah, I
somebody up
think
for
when
being
we know that a-
outside the, you know, for coming at 3:10 or something like that.
So if we know there's not a legitimate reason for them driving outside of those hours, more for our traffic purposes as well, but, that or in any form of rude behavior, we don't tolerate.
I think that might be helpful if you want to kind of forward that to Mark.
Sure,
just so
absolutely.
we have kind of a feel
Yeah,
of what
yeah.
your perspective is.
Absolutely. And, you know, not to beat a dead horse, but again, I mean, we feel like that's helpful to our cause because Jenny's really, you know, she's working very hard to comply with what, you know, are like fairly stringent conditions for a young woman trying to run this business successfully. And like Evelyn said, you know, hopefully with the cooperation of the town wanting to support, you know, this entrepreneur in this business. And so we're not claiming perfection with all of these things, but the reality bears no resemblance to the comments because the comments aren't really aligned with what the actual standards are. So, there's been some, you know, so we'll show those because it shows that Jenny, you know, when someone has to provide a non-compliance, she corrects it.
Did you
because
get
she's
written
trying to
up
comply.
today?
So,
Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you. Does anyone have anything?
for driving at
new that they
3:10.
would like to add to our
I have 2
discussion?
new things,
Did he?
2 new
Second,
things that I've not mentioned.
Sure, come on.
One of them just popped up. I'm gonna call blatant BS on the fact that people are not driving in their personal vehicles and picking up a company vehicle. It happens all the time. Her brother does it, the girl with the long dark hair who used to drive the black Toyota pickup truck did it.
Avery,
Okay.
I do not want to get
Okay.
contentious.
Okay.
We're
I'm
just-
sorry.
We're just collecting information, that's what we're doing.
This has been going on a long time and the information is on, so let me say this. Sam, I'm fairly sure, has contacted the police several times for some support and received none. We have received no support from the animal control officer. So again, these are agencies that are supposed to be helping us, or helping you see what's going on. It's not our job, but yet we're being forced to do it, but there needs to be some serious follow-up, and I don't know how you distinguish between a dog trip and a non-dog trip, because she says, are there dogs in the car? That doesn't matter, because people are picking up keys, go to other people's houses, to go let out dogs in Newburyport. That's all part of the business, and they're making trips to get these keys, they're bringing keys back. You tell me.
Yeah, I appreciate what you're saying, thank you. Okay. I think we've heard from a number of folks. I think I'm gonna close this informal discussion. And I don't know if we need to take anything else at this time. And so I'd like to thank everyone who came tonight to speak about this. And what we would like to do at this point in time is continue on our agenda and continue with our informal discussion with Mark Shapiro, Shapiro LLC, regarding 105 High Road. Folks are gonna leave here, just gonna take 2 seconds so people can get in and out of the room.
That's me in the car. Gary, you have a jacket?
Oh, yeah, thanks.
We gotcha. What doesn't she do right before ski season?
Well, no, no, but.
All right, who would like to help us wind this discussion?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Mark Griffin, Fenneman and Nicholson for the applicant, potential applicant, Mark Shapiro. We're here for an informal presentation. This is our third time in front of you. During the intervening time, from the last meeting in August, that was when a request was made for an opinion of town council. And the 2 questions that town council answered were, did the yield plan have to be by right? And then there was another question that was answered with respect to contiguous upland and the open space. So, the big question that we want to answer for you, I hope, tonight, is whether or not we've presented a yield plan that actually comports with town council's opinion. Now, I should point out that we strongly disagree with the conclusions made by town council and continue to believe that a yield plan could be one that could be reasonably permitted given zoning relief or waivers under the subdivision control regulations. However, we also realize that it's an exercise in futility to dispute the town council's opinion because that is your lawyer. So what we've done instead is try to comply with that opinion. And the plan that you have in front of you, we believe to be a by right yield plan. And so what we've done is to try to show 11 units. And lot 1 is a single family lot, and lots 4 through 6 would be 2 family lots. And if you look inside the circle on each lot, you'll see the square footage with respect to zoning and how it complies. So the single family lots, for instance, has the 40,000 square feet that are required. It has the required frontage, which is also in that little circular badge on the lot. And then in each of the other 2 family lots, it's 60,000 square feet of lot area, because that's what's required when you have town water, which we do have access to out here on High Road. And so, as you can see, the yield plan has a cul-de-sac. However, the cul-de-sac does not require a waiver. It's less than 500 feet, it's 440 feet. The pavement width, the right-of-way width, none of those require waivers. We access the lots in the rear by way of 2 driveways not a common driveway, so we don't require a common driveway special permit. So those two driveways come off of the cul-de-sac and extend up through the connection up here between, you know, this sort of parcel, defined almost parcel, and this one, which you can see even better over on this board. The driveways for lot 5 and lot 6 run up along this border. And so once you get into the so-called back parcel, the driveway runs over a wetlands crossing here, wetlands crossing there, and another one right there. You can see them better again over here. And over here we have lot 3 and lot 2, each of these being 2-family lots with more than enough square footage and more than enough of the 80% upland required for 260,000 square foot lots. A lot more upland than that, actually. I believe it's like close to 100,000 square feet of upland for almost each lot. So we think we're showing a by right, a yield plan that does not require zoning relief and that does not require waivers from the subdivision control regulations. And in reading the town council's opinion, that was her definition of what by right was, which was something that did not need waivers from the subdivision control regulations or zoning relief, that it complied with the bylaw and those regulations. We think that it does. And so what we're here in front of you tonight for is your feedback on this plan. And also, you know, this being our third meeting in front of you, where we've discussed this and also our concept plan at length, we just want to focus on this because now we think we can build this. And we really want to find out, you know, as a board, if that's what you want us to do. Or is it your preference that we would proceed with an OSRD, you know, type of subdivision? But I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, and now that I've sort of given you a little bit of an overview, I'm going to turn it over to Bob Grasso just to give you the details of this plan.
Rebecca, my name's Bob Grasso. Basically, what Mike said was what I was going to say. Any technical information that you want to ask, get an answer. Basically, we're doing like the previous plan was 500 foot length to the end of the cul-de-sac, but we shortened it up. We have the 22 feet of pavement required by the subdivision regulation and 25 foot around the cul-de-sac. We're providing during for the longer driveways, we're actually doing some fire turnarounds, showing right here for that lot, and actually 2 for the longest one on lot 3. Mark has talked to the fire department today. That's the type of turnarounds that they're requesting for long driveways. And we've also said that if we were to build this, those 2 back lots would probably be sprinkled for fire safety. So there's plenty of turnarounds for a fire truck if they go down the long driveways. They're 12-foot wide driveways with actually back to back. So if a fire truck had to go down, you could actually cross both, drive on both. You get 24 feet of pavement to drive on a fire truck on up to the crossings where they're split off. Each of them would have their own crossings. The total wetland crossings that were required to access the rear lots would be under 5,000 square feet, 499.8, which is allowable under DEP and the local regulations.
And Tom Hughes, our environmental wetland scientist, is going to actually address the crossings in a little bit more detail.
So crossings like this are really fairly common. And we really don't even need to get into the technicalities of how it's designed because we have a lot of options. You can do a causeway type fill, a bridge type fill. a lot of the details on how that's done comes out as the regulators review it. But whether or not you can do a crossing is really not much of an issue. In the instance of these crossings, basically what we would require for permitting is actually not a local conservation permit. It would be a permit from the Conservation Commission, but it's Wetland Protection Act only. The wetland bylaw in Newbury, once you get off Plum Island, is essentially a fee-only bylaw. All of the performance standards under the local bylaw have to do only with Plum Island. So we would have to comply with the Wetland Protection Act standards, which do have a 5,000 square foot limit on fill. If for any reason we ended up having to have driveways that exceeded 5,000 square feet of area, we would simply change over a portion of it to bridge with the surface with a grate that would allow light and water to pass through and reduce our impacts back under 5. The other permit we would require would be a programmatic general permit from the Army Corps, which again is a fairly routine thing to do. Typically, I believe this would actually qualify for what's called a self-verification with the Corps, where we essentially certify that we've met the standard, and that's all that happens. We send it in and they acknowledge receipt. If it did trigger the next level of review, essentially all that would do is the Army Corps would either look for wetland mitigation or they would look for us to pay an in-lieu fee. We actually call that paying Vinnie, but you can pay so much per square foot of wetland fill. It goes into a fund, and that money is used by the State Fish and Wildlife Department to do larger restoration projects. So it's really pretty straightforward. I've walked that wetland line. It was originally delineated by Mary Rimmer, and I've walked it in the key areas and fully agree with it. It's a pretty easy crossing because you actually have you have a big topographic change from the wetland up into the upland, so that there's really no trick in the grading or anything like that with it. So I'm very comfortable this is doable, and this is actually commonly done. I've done longer driveways. I can think of one in Methuen that was at least several hundred feet longer with an equivalent amount of wetland fill for a single family home. And I'm doing another one in another town I can't get into too much detail on, but that actually is a double crossing for a single family home. But, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
On the crossings.
Yeah.
It's permitted to have 5,000 feet, right, 5,000 square feet. And there's a plus and minus on the plan of 499.8 plus or minus.
Yeah.
What's customary and usual in the industry? What's that plus or minus mean?
Well, that's because nothing's exact. We always, as even lot areas, I always put plus or minus, because you could come, it's the way of rounding of a program. It could be 1 foot this way or 1 foot that way. It's the rounding. So that's why we always, it's just the industry way we do it. It's plus or minus.
That's on 1 foot?
1 foot.
And to give you an example, the type of thing that would be typical during a review is I believe that these 12-foot driveways actually go to 15 at the crossing. We're just trying to give it a little extra room. What may happen during a review is the Army Corps or possibly the commission could say, do you have to have 15 feet? What's the minimum that the fire department or you guys would accept? And then we might pare that down and make it a little narrower. What we've shown is a pretty aggressive fill at 15 feet wide. Normally we do a narrower fill. We have done larger fills. I mean, we had one in Haverhill where the fire department tried to push it to 32 feet wide. So if that's what they do, that's what they do. And we have to accommodate. We ended up negotiating it down to 26, but it's still a pretty wide crossing. So when we show 4,998, we have to demonstrate when this is all done for an as-built that we've actually met that under 5,000. So we just take a lot of great care in that getting laid out. Typically that's looked at very closely as it's constructed, and if anything, we try to trim up toes of slopes and things like that to try to bring it down. But we're just showing conceptually that we've got crossings here that work. And I don't see any reason why we couldn't make that work
Martha, if an application came in on this material, one of the first things that would probably happen is a peer review for engineering, which would cover all of the things which are different for tonight. And at some point, that may not work, but you're already on the way at that point. Is it better to have a review now, at their expense or not?
And I would say, right now, the board is at the point of trying to determine the number of units based on the yield plan, assuming that the OSRD is still what the end goal would be. So I'm not sure, I mean, we could certainly have Joe do a review if the board felt that was appropriate.
Or should this go back for us to town council, and let town council make a recommendation whether to have a review or not?
So we could do that as well.
Yeah, I think this is too much for me to look at tonight. And there's a lot of new material.
So I think that's a comment I was just about to make. It's 8:30. We got this material 15 minutes ago. And I appreciate that you appreciate town council and their recommendation and our position based on town council. So thank you. So I think, Martha, we didn't receive any of this in PDF or anything, did we?
We did not.
Okay. So, I think it's probably appropriate to send the material so that we can look at it, we can digest it, and then, we can go the next step. I'm sorry if you were hoping that you could get direction tonight on this. I'm sure that you spent many a day putting this together.
And many a dollar.
It's an interesting conceptual design, and I think there's some things that have to be looked at.
Can we at least discuss, one aspect of the overall idea, and that is, is this what you would prefer us to build, or is it the OSRD that
I don't
might be
know.
preferable?
I don't know if we have the answer to that question for you tonight.
Now, you would still go with the original concept plan for the OSRD? Or is that gonna have to be adjusted?
That would probably be the very similar concept plan. Although then we'd probably have to get into the discussion about, with you folks, as to whether, you're willing to grant a waiver on the contiguous upland, or that's in the open space, given the opinion that was, submitted by town council. And so, if that, again, is not something we could anticipate, then we wouldn't want to pursue that and spend a whole lot of money and find out that, we're not going to be able to afford it.
Appreciate that.
I know we can't ask for a definitive, decision from you folks, but I think that, these kind of informal sessions are supposedly encouraged. And we would like to get as much feedback as we possibly can before we pull the trigger and, again, spend the money.
And I think that's appropriate. And again, we saw this
I understand.
17 minutes ago.
Yeah.
the first time.
At the last meeting, Larry, you spoke of as of right.
Mhm.
The town council discussed as of right on the yield plan. As of right has to deal with what you have at the time, and that would not include the upland is not contiguous in front. If that were the case, then that would be down to about 44% in the front, so that's an issue.
Well, the as of right part has to do with the yield plan, right, not the concept plan.
It's the
Right.
same thing, I was talking
So-
about the yield plan.
Okay, but the contiguous part of the town council's opinion has to do with the concept plan, not this.
And how do you judge upland?
This is the,
For the yield equity.
this is a conventional subdivision plan.
Yeah,
This has no waivers.
Right.
We fully comply with the subdivision and zoning, frontage, area, access, roadway, everything. This can be built.
And I think the point you're trying to make, George, is under conventional subdivision, that contiguous upland is.
Correct.
That has no
Doesn't-
bearing.
doesn't apply.
Well, it does on the individual lots, which
Right,
we meet,
right.
which I
The-
show on
right, the
every lot.
80%, yeah.
And we've also reduced the number of lots from 6 down to 5. We took a duplex and made it a single, so we're actually at 11 units right now instead of 12. And I also reconfigured all the lots, so we were taking those 90-degree angles out at the fire access, and we made a much smoother transition for the driveways to access the lots. It's a very flowing path. odd curves. I don't see any problems with the radiuses for fire trucks. They totally meet turning radiuses for the 40-foot length of truck that we has. And plus we provide fire access turnarounds, 2 on one lot and 1 on the other. We can add another one if we had to.
So we think we've shown the 11 unit, yield as a baseline. So that if the board thought an OSRD was preferable for this conventional subdivision, we could start out with our 11 units in a concept plan, and possibly get a density bonus, by way of an affordable unit in the barn, like we talked about last time. So maybe 12 might be what we were looking for if we got to the concept plan. But right now, we just wanted to find out from this. I know you just got it. Don't want to proffer it just yet, but so that's what we're presenting tonight, and we think it complies. We'd be interested to hear what you folks have to say.
I appreciate your efforts and continue to work on it. So again, I think probably getting the material electronically so we can take a look at it, digest it.
This is probably going to be the final product if it's built, because it meets all the subdivision control standards. Why build a longer road if you don't have to? We actually shortened it up by 60 feet. Plus the pervious area, it can be built.
So we'll send you PDFs of all the plans. Oh, send them to Martha.
The problem is, Martha, I tried sending them today, but they're over 7 megabytes. They can't get transferred to your email.
If you can put them in a Dropbox or something and send
Yeah,
them,
I'll give you a flash
some other
drive.
file
so you
share.
can share. So I can handle it, the flash drives.
Or there's some way, sometimes you can do a compact PDF. Didn't work.
It didn't work.
Yeah. Well, sometimes they said third time's a charm, right?
Yeah, well, it only accepts 2, and I was up to 7 on each drawing.
What do you think, we might be able to be on the next agenda?
Well, the next meeting is the 18th. We do have the golf center that day. So it'll be a long meeting.
So I know that our next meeting is probably gonna be an elongated process.
So we'll have to start early.
Martha, I just want to say, there probably won't be any changes to this plan, so it's just basically you reviewing it, and if you have any questions.
It's you folks asking us questions. We don't plan on presenting.
I don't think we got any different. This is it.
Other meeting is time specific.
7:15, so we can try to do this first.
You could be while I photograph this, it's much easier to work with.
Yeah. So, I mean, we don't need a lot of time unless you need a lot of time. So, we're basically there to answer questions.
I'll bring the same plans, and we're just looking for your questions.
Right, we could meet at 6:45.
It's not a public hearing, it's more basically formal, so.
Everybody okay to come in? 6:45? 6:45. Okay.
Will we be the first informal?
You'll be the first informal for a long night.
Unless you want to hang around.
Yeah. Is that continued?
Thank you. Did we mention a county?
They're gonna have channels on the back end.
He's gonna be staying.
You guys know how to live hard.
I'm gonna buy one. Like a studio. Carry bag, map carrying bag.
See ya. Got it. Oh, that's right, yeah. Steve's all done. He's done. He's working on my job and he said, because I can build it. I'm just developing that. He says, I'm done. And my other guy, Bruce Whitten, said, I'm done. It's okay. I mean, I needed it to happen because they've been with me so long. They've been so comfortable. They're like, uh-oh, we don't have to throw anymore. What the hell are we gonna do? So anyway.
I
did a
change the.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Draft,
Yeah.
no comments in any detail. Is there anything substantive to the first draft?
There was, the first one I haven't gotten partway through, so it covers kind of the second two-thirds of the application in terms of details. And, you know, the question is, and I want to talk to Lisa about this, as I noted in my email the last time around, we were kind of advised to keep it at a very high level, in terms of sort of major concerns. But now that this is our second time around, we have a better idea of what some of the issues are, what some of the possibilities are. It seemed appropriate to actually look at the application in more detail. You know,
Yeah, I
certain
mean,
things
we're
like
gonna
this
have
is
another
still-
opportunity, right?
and this is the first round, so what will happen is if Mass Housing issues a letter of eligibility for the project, they will most likely note some of the town's concerns in their letter, as they did last time. But the last time we really didn't address some of the like sustainable concepts and things like that, which really seems to be a big part of the application as far as Mass Housing is concerned. And things like the bedroom mix, the sort of the equality or lack of equality between the affordable units and the non-affordable units, which I think would be important to point out.
That's consistent with the first letter too.
That one actually didn't talk about that. Yeah, the first time we really talked about, we had serious concerns about the developer, which we don't have this time. Because the first developer had never done a subdivision, much less a 40B. We had concerns about the site itself, putting a cul-de-sac on the end of the cul-de-sac, which I think still is, you know, very much a concern here. There was talk about being consistent with the neighborhood, and while it's very much appreciated that they're doing single-family houses, it's not really consistent. The density isn't consistent with the neighborhood. And a lot of those things are really addressed in the draft letter that I put together, which is similar to the one from last time, but the other comments really are much more detailed. And I think part of the question to the board is how much of that do you feel is appropriate to put in the planning board's letter to the selectmen? And then I can work with town council to see how much would be appropriate to put in the overall town letter to Mass Housing.
Well, my inclination is to suggest that you incorporate all of your comments into the draft letter, planning board letter. And if working with town council, if she feels that, you know, something needs to be stricken or further expanded on, then, you know, be directed by that. But what's your timeline here?
So the presentation, just as a reminder, is next Tuesday, the 10th. It's 7 o'clock. So my goal has been, since the board will be, both boards will be together again on the 18th, to have a draft letter ready for review by the 18th. And then it needs to go to Mass Housing on the 23rd.
Okay, so it's gotta happen next week. Yeah. Or
The following, yeah, 2 weeks from last Monday.
I would put in as much as I could, the board.
All right.
I think so, yeah.
Because if we don't, who will? Or if you don't, who will?
I'd agree. But I think putting in really kind of honing in on the advanced equality concept, you know, is really very important. And the lack of agency in the affordable components
Yeah, it seems an opportunity, especially given our housing production plan, which is focused on the need for younger families, but also our older population having, at least universal design, if not ADA compliance in some of the units, seems to be appropriate. And they have made some assertions in the application which really aren't backed up by their explanations in terms of using, sustainable materials or proximity to transportation. There really isn't any scheduled public transportation. It's not walkable to anywhere.
Yeah, and I don't know how important that is to mass housing, but it seems like a fairly glaring overstatement.
Yeah, I mean, that was my feeling. So at least, my feeling was that it should be brought to mass housing's attention. They can do with it as they will. I mean, obviously, we need the affordable units.
That'd be nice.
And I think another value potentially of bringing these points up now is that they are things, assuming they do get their letter and a comprehensive permit is submitted to the town, they could be negotiating points for the ZBA with the applicant.
Stretch code, that's good. Good. So we'll review this a little bit more and then get comments back to you?
That would be fine.
Okay.
I'll
do that.
Just individually, no mass,
Yeah.
no reply all emails or anything like that.
Everyone has that, right?
Yep.
All right, thank you. All right, moving on to our new business.
Which we have none tonight. I think we had enough old business.
Excellent. So for our town planners report.
I don't have much yet. We are expecting, I think I mentioned last time, a site plan review application for the Governor's Academy for the French Student Center renovation in addition. That may be coming in for the meeting on the 18th. I've also been contacted by Jeff Hoffman at Millennium, who wants to submit a subdivision plan for 68 Green Street, parcel that's owned by the Jackmans. And he has tentatively requested to be on the agenda for September 18th as well for the submission. So I told him that I needed to get a draft of that by next Wednesday.
I'm sorry, Matthew, could you repeat that?
I need to get a draft.
No,
It's 68 Green Street
Oh.
subdivision plan, and I haven't, I know that he was originally looking at doing it with a number of waivers, based on some previous plans that were done, which I think were done long enough ago that the waivers aren't really something that would fly at this point. But I haven't seen what he's planning on doing. So those are really the,
Okay, is that on for the 18th or is that requested for the 18th?
it's currently tentatively requested for the 18th, but that's what he's aiming for, so I think it's likely. So if we're gonna start at 6:45, I think we could, start with the 105 High Road and hopefully get those other two submissions in before the public hearing starts.
Okay. 2 other submissions in addition to.
The Governor's Academy
So
and the
3.
Green Street.
3 in half an hour. Okay.
But the other two are just, if there's submissions, there should really be, very little discussion
Okay.
associated with them.
6:30.
I think 6:45.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
No.
Good. Liaison reports.
Board of Selectmen.
I was not here for that meeting.
I was. We went over a few things. One day liquor license, there wasn't a lot of really important stuff. There was a good thing, so Bethany brought the Road Day in Old Newbury, along with the Sustainable Club that started over 100 years ago. And so they're gonna do like a proclamation and name the day after her. And the states can come in and reward her with certificates, and it'll be a party. And she does, it's gonna be at the Spencer Little Farm.
Do you know when that will be?
Pardon me?
Do you know when that will be?
I don't have the date on that, but I can get that. The car shows is Friday night. Tyler Went is going for his Eagle Scout project, and he's proposing to build a bridge from the playing fields to Triton, so there'll be an easier path to get back and forth instead of getting out on the road or hiking through like a marshy, wet area. It's a big undertaking. His original thought was 120 feet, but they've reduced it down to 60 feet. So he has a few more hurdles to jump before he can get going on that.
From the playing, which playing fields?
On Central Street,
The Mantor
Mantorfield.
From, and that'll connect to,
Triton.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
there's a small narrow area back there where they touch, where they're contiguous?
Yeah, there's a little bit of a wetland area,
Okay.
so it'll be,
Is that way beyond the baseball field? The Triton's varsity's baseball
I'm
field?
not really sure on what side, exactly where that is.
There's
but-
actually a trail that connects the campus with Mantor Field.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's wet in the wintertime, but I think the cross-country team uses it, run through there.
They also figured that it would be an improvement as far as like safety reasons for, getting off of the Triton property, just a different destination in order to escape. ClearGov, I guess, is gonna be going on track pretty soon. Hopefully before the fall town meeting, which is gonna be on November 12th now.
Has
Yeah.
this been changed from the 12th, from the 5th to the 12th?
Mm-hmm,
That's late.
yeah,
They want to get the bids in for the,
yep, for the police station. So that should be going out this week, I think. And then there's a couple of food trucks that wanna come in and get vendor's license, and so they have to investigate